Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to the panel on Green Cpec, Leveraging Green Financing and Low Carbon Development. It is a pleasure to be a part of the Clean Energy Transition Summit today, and I give a warm welcome to all of you. So at first, I would like to introduce Mr. Hassan Daud Butt. Mr. Hassan is the CEO of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Provincial Board of Investment and Trade and has been assigned additional charge of CEO KPSECA in January 2020. He's also the focal person for Ease of Doing Business initiative of the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa government and is chairman of committee for formulating KP's industrial policy and new merged districts incentive policy. He was the committee member for Cpec, for articulating Cpec's long-term plan and Gwadar Smart Port City Master Plan. Earlier, as a diplomat in Embassy of Pakistan, Beijing, China, and Hanoi, Vietnam, he carried out MNC and facilitation of entire spectrum of strategic projects and has remained engaged with the Chinese government and enterprises for procurement and tracking of all ongoing and new projects. So it is a pleasure to have you with us, Mr. Hassan Daud Butt. Thank you. Over to you.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a matter of great honor for me to come and speak on this clean energy transition summit. And I think, like we've been discussing about most of our issues, especially related to economy, related to infrastructure development, I think, relating it with China-Pakistan Economic Corridor and the future energy development and also future energy consumption is extremely important. So as the government is focusing now, and just yesterday CCI also approved the energy policy and how new projects would be initiated under a radar and a transition towards clean energy projects and also using indigenous sources of energy. It's extremely imperative, like that think tanks like SDPI conduct roundtable discussions as we are having right now, and also invite experts who have clear idea of how Cpec and other initiatives are taken. And I'm glad that I see my friend Mr. Mustafa here, Dr. Liaquat and Dr. Fayaz, all key speakers and who have clear idea of how is it going forward. So now let's first look at, do a little bit of SWOT analysis, and then perhaps I would be able to give few recommendations. Clearly, Pakistan is an energy deficient country. And if we are talking about special economic zones under Cpec and the kind of industry that we are trying to attract, especially export-led industry and industry where more labor could be employed, I think the requirement of energy would increase. As we speak, we have around 15 projects worth 22 billion under various phases of implementation under Cpec for energy. And the total portfolio that was discussed in 2013 and later in 2015 was for 17,000 megawatts. So right now with projects which are under different stages and also those that are being discussed, the total volume I think it becomes of the energy projects is around 13,000, 14,000 megawatt, and the remaining about 3,400 balance capacity is still there. Within Ministry of various elements of the power division and also discussion with the water division and also at the provincial level, there is a discussion on how to leverage our natural endowments, especially in our northern areas where we have potential in Chitral and elsewhere, and also in AJK where hydel projects are being done and could be initiated in future. We are, as we speak, also discussing various stakeholders in mini micro energy projects, and a lot of interest we've seen from investors from far and away and also from China, who are keen to come and invest in not just in the project themselves but also in technology. Perhaps next week I am working with GIK to have a conference on on all those engineering companies and local engineering companies which develop and produce turbines for these who have the potential to produce mini micro turbines for mini micro hydel projects. So I think if we move in the right direction, and I think and totally echoing what the video was highlighting aspects, and I saw Dr. Hena there and Dr. Vakar speaking about energy. I think it's just the way to go. But I only have one issue with that video, and also the discussion that we usually have is around Tharcoal. I think the kind of socio-economic development and the socio-economic impact that Tharcoal can have and has the potential to have has to be reflected. The change that it can bring in our total energy basket, in terms of having the indigenous sources, and also the way that it can address poverty alleviation aspect in that area, and largely in that part of Sindh, I think is extremely important. Please remember, as an important country which lies as a good case study in Belt and Road Initiative, and has been discussed as a good case study within the Belt and Road forums. Pakistan was cognizant of its responsibility, and the initial 4 projects that were implemented were all in either wind energy or solar. We had Qaid-e-Azam, we had projects of wind in Jhampi, which is our energy corridor, and then later in Thar and also hydro projects. So by next year, when we have Suki Kanari coming in, we have Karot Kohala coming in, I think our energy basket towards indigenous sources, towards clean green energy, and also towards solar and hybrid energy sources would change. And I think that would also ensure our energy, while catering for impact on the global climate change and carbon emission, I think. And by using supercritical technology, we have addressed that to a limit, and we need to be constantly looking at this as we move along by inducting more projects. In Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, ladies and gentlemen, in our industrial policy, we have kept a complete chapter as far as eco-friendly and sustainable investment is concerned. We are aware of this fact while we were making the development agreement for Rashakai, and I just had a discussion earlier in the morning today with our Secretary of Energy about how transitioning towards a cleaner, eco-friendly energy basket for Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is important. So at the end, I would congratulate SDPI for getting the experts together. And last point, again, that while we talk too much on the environment, please also remember that it's important to become rich as a country. So starting from the first industrial revolution to the industrial revolution that is knocking at our door, having cleaner energy is imperative, but also having cheaper source of energy is also important, equally important. So we need to strike that balance, cross that bridge, and as they say, be careful what we wish for, it might come true.
Thank you so much for sharing those words of wisdom with all of us, particularly relating to the very definition of energy security, which is not just ensuring a reliable supply of energy, but also ensuring that it is affordable and meets the needs of your nation. So thank you, Daud Saab, for sharing these words with us. Our next speaker is going to be Mr. Mustafa Sayed Haider. Mustafa Sayed Haider is the Executive Director of the Pakistan-China Institute, PCI. He heads the leading, oldest, and first of its kind think tank of Pakistan, which focuses on bilateral relations between Pakistan and China. This Pakistan-China Institute plays a pivotal role in shaping discourse on issues ranging from China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, BRI, regional connectivity, and people-to-people contact. As Executive Director, he is responsible for building new partnerships with Chinese counterparts, as well as enabling Pakistani organizations and professionals to connect and engage with China via the platform of the BCI. In his 7 years as ZED, he has represented Pakistan at key international platforms. He has also played a key role in soliciting and fostering investment in energy and infrastructure in Pakistan and increased investor confidence in the economy of Pakistan, including but not limited to Pakistan. So, Mr. Mustafa, I would first ask you this question, that what could be the potential future pathways to leverage low carbon development under Cpec? You may share this in light of the major challenges and limitations in implementing green financing strategies and green investments in Cpec. So thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Daja Hao, Niman Hao. Good afternoon and Assalamu alaikum. Firstly, it's a pleasure to be here amongst such an august gathering of the likes of SDPI and Hassan Daud Butt, who is an icon on Cpec, and Liaquat Shah, who's been associated with the project since it began in 2013, and SDPI is always focused on clean and green energy. And I also would like to congratulate Hina Aslam for her consistent efforts in this regard. Firstly, with all due respect, I would like to respectfully disagree with my dear friend Hassan Daud, but when it comes to greening Cpec, because according to the Chinese banking regulator, CBIRC, and also the Green Development Guidance Handbook, which is, as we know, the reference point of the Belt and Road Green Development Alliance based in Beijing, hydropower is better than coal power, but it is not considered green and or clean energy. And it is that is because when you do undertake hydropower projects, you have to use dynamites, you have to use heavy equipment, which does unfortunately impact the ecosystem and environment. So while it is better relatively than coal, it still has a certain impacts on the environment and is not considered green and clean. But that said, we do have to find that balance when it comes to the green reset, which Pakistan really needs to undertake. And the green reset has to have a mix, energy mix, which is predominantly green. But of course, also we have signed and we have a lot of coal power plants. We have hydropower plants, like my friend Hassan Daud Butt Saab said, Suki Kanari, Karot, Kohala, some of the hydropower plants in Cpec, and these will be coming up soon. So I think that that is very important to factor in. And I think that when you talk about coal power plants, they have been game changers for Pakistan's energy needs. We have, after Cpec, bridged the gap between the installed capacity and demand, which was there before Cpec. And these power plants have played a very important role in uplifting communities and economic growth. However, we as a country have to find that balance where we also undertake industrialization, but preserve and protect our environment and ecosystem, and undertake green and clean projects, including those of energy and infrastructure, because we are the 7th most affected country when it comes to the climate crisis, 7th most. And our contribution to the global emissions is under 2%. So we are highly and adversely affected by climate change. We are on the top 10 list. And that's why we have flash floods and a lot of other climate issues in different provinces. Yet we contribute only under 2% to the global carbon emissions. So I think this is very important to set the record straight. Now, when we talk about greening Cpec, what do we need to do? Firstly, when you talk about renewable energy investments, you have to have an integrated grid system. That is a prerequisite for renewable energy investments. I think from today onwards, Pakistan does not need more energy investments. But firstly, we need to integrate, upgrade the grid, because the biggest power, as we all know, the biggest problem is not about power generation anymore. It's about power evacuation. We have undertaken multiple projects over the past 7 years under Cpec and otherwise as well, but we have not in tandem upgraded the grid and developed our grid. And if we want to solicit renewable energy investments, we have to lure investors in solar energy, in wind energy, and so forth. And for that, the distributed generation and transmission and dispatch investments are critical. So when we talk about energy investments, that doesn't always mean power projects. It can also mean grid infrastructure and grid investments, upgrading the grid. And some of us have had the pleasure of visiting China and going to the state grid headquarters, going to the southern grid headquarters. And the first and foremost thing that China has done if you look at state grid, which handles all of north of China, which is equivalent to multiple South Asian countries. And I remember Liaquat Shah Saab has also visited this very important company, and Hassan Daud Saab as well. It's integrated, the grid, fully integrated digitally. And this is a very big problem when we talk about Gwadar. We know that our grid is not integrated. By maybe 2021, as we know, the latest is that KESCO plans to 2021 or maybe even 2022 connect Gwadar. We talk about Gilgit-Baltistan, it's not connected to the national grid. So we have this problem of a grid connectivity. And then when we talk about the green reset, it's also very important that we learn from China. And the environmental, social, and governance bonds, ESG bonds that China issued to enhance their green projects and their green pathway. The environmental, social, and governance bonds is one example where we can learn from China. The other is giving special government sovereign guarantees for green projects. The guarantees that we have for regular energy projects is there, but we can give special incentives for green investments, which give guarantees to investors, which give surety to investors, and make it more commercially attractive for investors to invest in green projects. Because when you talk about soliciting investments in the green realm, you have to have it buttressed and backed up by commercial incentives, because the investors are going to invest based on IRRs, based on rate of returns. And if we give those green incentives, that can be, I think, a very important step forward. And that would obviously involve our organizations such as the State Bank, and which give the sovereign guarantees. And also, we have to reform our pricing system, because one of the reasons that we have more carbon high projects is because that of late the tariffs that are given were more attractive for those projects. And that's why all investors went for those projects. So we have to reform our pricing system. And for that, NEPRA also has to be involved. So it has to be a coordinated effort. No single organization, Ministry of Energy or Power, can take this forward. And I see you have the mic up. Am I exceeding my time limit? Just give me 30 seconds.
Just a little bit. Yeah, please finish, and then we can take the next speaker. Sure. Thank you, Mustafa.
Sure, I'll just finish in the next 30 seconds. So reforming the electricity system and how the tariffs are determined is one very important part, because NEPRA is an autonomous body. So this is, I think, a very, very important thing. And the financing institutions, particularly the financing institutions which are international institutions like the China Exim Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the AIIB, which are now going to be playing a leading role in Cpec, they have to be on board when it comes to green financing. And because investors will ultimately go to these big financing institutions for debt financing for renewable energy projects. So they also have to be partial towards green projects. So these are some of my proposals and ideas on the way forward for a green reset for Pakistan. And last but not least, I'd like to mention that it is very important, and I've said it before, that we establish a joint working group in the JCC for greening Cpec. And if we have a JWG under the JCC mechanism, that will further bolster and expedite the greening Cpec reset in Pakistan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mustafa, for sharing your thoughts. Quite excellent. And specifically, you've given us a great segue to our next focus, which is going to be particularly on the commercial side and on financial institutions. So I would like to welcome Ms. Chu Hong, who is the Deputy Chief Financial Officer of the China Power International. She has 15 years of experience in finance and treasury management for China and the Three Gorges Corporation. She spent 2 years in a career which is the largest private energy producer of China and is in charge of overseas project finance. She's also spent time as the General Manager of Capital Operation Department of China Power International Development Limited, and now works as the Deputy CFO of China Power International. So over to you, Ms. Chu. I would like to ask you, what role can financial institutions and policymakers play, both in China and Pakistan, in mobilizing finance towards accelerating green investments under Cpec? Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me to this panel, and sorry for late because I haven't a chance to listen for the other guests' speech. From our side, just as you introduced, I'm working in the energy sector for almost 20 years, and I once worked in Three Gorges company, and they invested huge hydro dams and hydropower plants in Pakistan, and also the renewable energies like the wind projects there. And currently, I worked in Cpec, which is the is the main subsidiary of SPIC. We also has the thermal power plant of 1200 megawatts in Pakistan. So I think since the very close relationship and the strategic partnership between China and Pakistan, we set up the economic corridor a few years ago. The cooperation through the investment is a very strong and effective way to strengthen the booming the development of the economy for both of the countries. And from the financial side, because I'm not from the financial institutions, but I can say something about from my observation. And according to we cannot how to say to separate the financials with the infrastructure and the policy maker and the strategy planning to say the some point of view only on financial. We have, because sometimes it's a sort of a result of the comprehensive work. If the whole infrastructure and the policy making and the planning of the whole energy sector is not mature or developed enough, and then we cannot provide very competitive or efficient financials to those projects, especially the renewables. And I think not only the President Xi Jinping has announced the 30-60 goals for the future, and the whole of the world has made its own targets. So for developing the renewables, we can see from the history of the European countries. At the beginning, the government gave the subsidies to invite so many investors in this area, and with the development and the how to say, the cost of the technology going down, and then those renewables can self-develop themselves. So at this moment, I think in Pakistan, we face some receivables problems. So all the Chinese investors, because the government provided very attractive tariff schemes, but for the investors, I think they would like to secure their returns. But the returns may be, how to say, firstly, the first priority is to guarantee the daily operation of the power plant, and then the payment of the debt and the interest, and the last is the return of the equity. So if there's not efficiency or the liquidity in the market to secure the investors' cash-based return, and then they may make them reluctant to increase their investment. This is the first observation from our side. And the other thing is, I suggest to booming the capital market in the local in Pakistan, because I think capital market can, if you can develop the capital market, and then it can attract more and more investors, because the private investors, they need more efficient exit way to make their money more liquidity and has more profitable. That's the second suggestion. And I think from the People's Public Bank and the central bank in Pakistan, as what I know, they already had some conversation about it. So we also very happy to see there's some improvement or the progress on that. And this is the second opinion. And for the third, I think just as the previous speaker gave us his opinions, is to make the infrastructure and the power grid to stable enough to support the renewables, to lower the challenges of the large size of renewables to the safety of the grid. That's also very important. So we have to invest much to optimize or to make a better and a stronger grid in Pakistan. And then because when the project is safe enough, and they can make very stable and safe and clean energy, and then there's no problem in the cash payment, then so the whole how to say, the power generation to the cash flow circle can be closed, and then it will give the investors more strong confidence in this country. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hong, for sharing your excellent words with us. And a pleasure to have you here with us today. I will now like to invite Dr. Liaquat Ali Shah, who is the Executive Director and Head of Policy Division of the Center of Excellence of Cpec. Dr. Liaquat Ali Shah is the Executive Director of the Center of Excellence for Cpec and the Pakistan Institute of Development Economics, Ministry of Planning, Development and Reform in Islamabad. His responsibilities as the head of policy division, and he provides evidence-based research and recommendations for promoting industrialization and trade in Pakistan under Cpec. So Dr. Liaquat, I wanted to ask you, what would be the socioeconomic impacts of diverting Cpec investments from coal-based power generation to renewable energy alternatives, mainly solar and wind? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you for having me on this very important seminar on energy, clean energy. First and foremost, let me appreciate SDPI for taking on this very important topic on a very critical time. If ever there was a time to discuss this topic, I think it's now. The reason why I say, because we are all convinced that climate change is real, and the global warming is basically proof of it. So this is really very important and very close to my heart also. And I will discuss some of the research we have conducted also in the same area. But before, I also listened to Hassan Saab, then Mustafa Saab, and also to Madam. They basically shared very good suggestions how to tackle basically the energy issue we are facing in Pakistan. There was a disagreement also, but I say between Hassan Saab and Mustafa Saab, but I think that this agreement can be settled. It's not a major issue. That's reality. That definitely I myself agree that we need a clean energy, and the way Mustafa Saab put it, we are experiencing basically a climate issue, and Pakistan is among the worst hit in the whole region. So for that reason, I think we should go for the clean energy. But at the same time, if I agree with Hassan Saab, it's basically the ground realities also. We do need basically coal. The reason is we have a huge reserve of coal, which is about 175 billion ton even in Thar, and some billion tons elsewhere also in Pakistan. So we have a huge reservoir, and if we look at the coal as a source of power production or for power generation, so definitely coal is still widely used in the world. Even in the USA, 42% of the electricity is produced from coal. I think the global average is around 40-45%, and it will continue to have a dominant and significant share even in the near future also. So I think the question is not about whether the source should be coal or the source should be renewable. I think we can also offset, or we can also basically minimize the impact of the coal, because we put the whole burden on the greenhouse emission on the back of coal, and we think that definitely the share of oil, the crude oil, the natural gas, and coal in the greenhouse emission, it's significant, and it cannot be avoided. So, but with the same time, we have some technologies now available, and the world is working on it. Even the USA is very much interested in it. There was an Air Act on, in the USA. Initially, they listed coal basically, to minimize the share of coal in the whole power energy mix. But later on, it was delisted. So there is a reason. There is basically an economic reason, and so the same issue basically applies here in Pakistan also. So we have the local coal. What we need to do at this time is basically to use some advanced technologies which are available. For example, let me give you an example about the coal technology which is available. We have the integrated gasification combined cycle power plants now. This basically technology converts coal into syngas. I was going through basically the document, the renewable energy document. Syngas is basically treated as a renewable. So we can use coal, the technology to convert coal into syngas, which becomes renewable. So for this is basically the application of technology. So the thing is, and that's also a reality. I should add that the coal, we cannot remove all the pollutants from power plant stakes. Both economically it's not possible, both physically it's not possible. So but with the application of clean and coal technology, clean technologies or cleaner technology, I would say, we can minimize the impact. So we should go for the clean technology, but at the same time, the share of the clean energy should also be enhanced, should be increased in our power mix. And Pakistan, even under Cpec, we are very much committed to increase the share of these technologies. For instance, I would give some references to some of the published documents we have in the Ministry of Planning Commission. For example, the urge or the desire to move towards clean energy or to employ renewable energy. It is basically reflected in the Vision 2025 document. Also in the power market study we have conducted jointly with the China under Cpec, we have also in the future predicted are basically planned to involve to include more projects from the renewables so that to increase the share. And the renewable energy document itself basically want to move from to enhance the share of the renewable to 20% by 2025 and then take it to 30% by 2030 from a 4% which is actually now. So there is basically a desire, there is a realization also to enhance. And with the technology development, when since the technology is improving, the cost is reducing. So with these developments, definitely the coal will be replaced slowly but gradually with the renewables in the future. So I believe that the commitment is there, the plan is there, and we have a policy now over there, how basically to encourage investment in the same in the area. There is an incentive package also available for that. So these things, but at the same time, I would again say that coal should not be eliminated completely right now. We should move, we should phase out coal-related power plants in the future, but at the same time involve all the technologies with the clean technologies, which basically I mentioned one, but there are others also for the carbon capture and storage technology that's there, which we have basically how to desulfurize the coal, the technology is there. So we need to implement or we need to enforce basically not compel, I would say, but incentivize the investors to invest in core technologies and use the same technology. Second thing is, which I mentioned about the syngas, it's the, coal cannot only be used for power production. So the coal is there, the technology is there. So we can move to electricity generation, but at the same time, the same coal can also be used for fuel, for liquid, for diesel. It can be used basically in fertilizer, in cement industry, even in textile also. So there are multiple applications of coal which is available. So I would recommend, my opinion and my suggestion would be not to blame coal for all the things. This is basically a precious reserve we have. What we need to do is to implement and employ the core clean technologies to transform it. Now coming towards the socioeconomic. So I would just say, okay.
Sorry, Dr. Lakat, if you could kindly just wrap up your thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, I would coming toward the socio-economic development. Definitely the SDGs. I think Mr. Ali Kamal is there, and he would not disagree that socio-economic development is not possible without power, without cheap power. So the cheap power basically comes from whatever resources we have, indigenous resources we can utilize. So again, I would say that the socio-economic benefits are there. Coal, we are going to develop it, and we can see the benefits, the socio-economic effect in the third region. Investments are coming there, local people, they are being employed over there, and in future, more and more industry would come that would not basically be for only electricity production, but more industry would come, the downstream industry would come and would settle in coal, and I'm sure and I'm hopeful that the third region and the rest of the country would improve with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Liaquat Ali Shah, for sharing your thoughts on the clean energy transition, specifically on the transition part. So that was excellent. Thank you. I would now request Mr. Zara Khan, who is the Assistant Director of the State Bank of Pakistan, to please speak and share his thoughts on the clean energy transition. Specifically, I would like to ask him, how can green financing strategies pave the roadmap to the transition towards a low carbon economy? So over to you, Mr. Zara Khan.
Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank SDPI for inviting me for this important event. And I would like to say that the SDPI has played a commendable role in bringing together the public sector and the private sector to discuss on this clean energy transition. I think the sustainable financing is the need of the hour, and around the globe, there have been discussions on uh, uh, how to have a smooth transition towards a green economy. So I believe to make a transition towards a green economy, specific enabling conditions need to be established for making green projects and green sector attractive to the investors and the businesses. To this end, State Bank is also proactively promoting green initiatives and green banking. Under this, we have started three main green initiatives. The first one is SPP financing scheme for renewable energy, which my fellow panelists have also mentioned. So in SPP finance scheme for renewable energy, we are providing subsidized facility to borrowers for establishing power projects up to 50 megawatts. And I'm happy to share that this scheme has uplifted very much. So another initiative is the green window. We have started to provide financing for the bricklines to be established. The bricklines are the new technology of zigzag technology has been financed through this facility. The third one is, I believe, the transition to the green economy is the financial institutions play a key role in transition of green economy. So we have established green banking guidelines for the financial institutions. The green banking guidelines is based on three basic pillars. The first one is environmental risk assessment, environmental risk management. So basically, it encourages the banks to integrate the environmental risk into their uh, into their credit risk assessment and policies. The second one is the green business facilitation, where the banks are encouraged to promote green businesses and facilitate them and uh, establish green products to increase the green financing in Pakistan. The third one is also own impact reduction, where the banks are encouraged to reduce their own carbon footprint by taking measures like paperless banking or solarized ATMs or branches and offices as well. Uh, the we have also we are looking to ensure that the green banking guidelines are properly implemented. We are looking forward to make the environmental risk management component uh, mandatory for the banks, and State Bank in future might make the environmental risk management mandatory for banks, so that the banking sector can take into account the environmental risks related to their financing to the businesses. Uh, for a recommendation, I think that uh, the we need to work on establishing green bond frameworks so that the investors and issuers can come together, and we need to uh, get a national level action plan so that we can develop the green bond market in Pakistan. That will be beneficial for the Cpec projects as well as other speeding the transition towards the green economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zara Khan, for sharing your thoughts. So the next speaker that we had planned originally was Mr. Ali Kamal, who is the Chief SDGs of the Ministry of Planning, Development and Special Initiatives. Mr. Ali Kamal, are you here with us? All right. So unfortunately, he is not here at the moment with us, so we will miss his words on basically how can all of this, the green financing and the key pathways and low carbon development relates to green growth and the SDGs. I would now like to thank all our distinguished panelists for sharing their thoughts. There were quite a few, we had a lot of synergies present today and some disagreements as well that we would like to perhaps shed more light on future panels as well, specifically points raised on the status of hydropower as a renewable energy source or not, which is, of course, quite a controversial topic when you talk about the clean energy transition. So that's one point we can further explore in the future. Other paths that come out of this is, of course, Mr. Mustafa's recommendation for the creation of a working group that is specifically focused on this very topic. Dr. Liaquat was kind enough to share how Cpec investments from coal-based power generation can perhaps be there in the transition. Of course, again, that's debatable in the clean energy transition. So we would like to hear his thoughts in the future on this as well. A warm thank you to Mr. Zara Khan for sharing his words and sharing what the State Bank of Pakistan has been doing in this regard on green financing. And of course, a huge thank you to Mr. Hassan Daud Butt for opening the session. Thank you to all our esteemed panelists for being here with us today.